Hello, Assalamu alaikum everybody. Hope you're all safe, sound, and healthy. And today I'm going to talk about nose pins. Yes. Because how big do you people think our noses are? No, seriously. How gigantic of a tunnel do you think our nostrils are? That people literally make up to 8 millimeters long posts. The posts are the needles, the stems of the nose pin. Like, have people, I mean, seriously, I don't know where this concept came from, because I actually remember that the traditional nose pins, which we call the coca, right? That was basically the screw or the labret. I think it's called the labret. There's the threaded one, the screw one. And there was also that one where you literally just stick the flat end, it kind of just sticks. I remember, because I remember once when we had recently moved to Pakistan. In those days, my mom was looking for us for these really tiny ear studs, and you know what, the shopkeeper, I remember, he was showing. He also had nose pins, and they were those that I'm talking about, those with really small posts, and they had a flat end, that actually just sticks as if it's magnetic or something. I never found out how it actually, although I actually bought them and I had them, and literally it was like magnet. I don't know, you just put it and it sticks, okay, and it was amazing. But the thing is, the reason why I avoid labrets and screws and threads and ball ends and the ones that stick like magnets, is because I always had that fear that it can fall. And many people have said that yes, suddenly, while you're asleep, you would feel that it's fallen out, and it can be very dangerous, very dangerous. So I've always gone for the bones, the ones that end like bones. They have a sort of a slightly enlarged bulbous end, and that is, I always preferred that. Or the when it comes to the corkscrew, which is exactly how it sounds, it's a corkscrew at the end. The thread, or the tail, or the post, whatever, the wire, whatever you like to call it, of the nose pin, it ends up in a coil, okay? And I was never a fan of it, and I found out that most people are not a fan of it. But the only reason we kind of prefer it is that your nose pin isn't going to go anywhere. It's not going to fall off because it's such a long coil, But that's also the bad part about it, is because the tail end of the coil tends to stick out of your nose. As I said, how big do you think our noses are to make such gigantic, I mean, seriously. So when I and I'm talking about, the nose pins that the corkscrew, the one that I bought it from an Indian shop in the UK, because that's where I pierced my nose, actually, in the UK, just before coming back to Pakistan. Actually, the same year, I think, that I was coming back to Pakistan is when I finally pierced my nose. And I bought a gold nose ring, and I bought this corkscrew one. And to be honest, the corkscrew one was amazing. It was my favorite, except for the fact that I hated how the tail end stuck out, which I've, by the way, just only after all these years, imagine, after almost 2 decades, I finally used a nail cutter and cut just a little bit of its tail and made it really short. How comfortable now. But the point is, I hardly even wear, the whole point of my piercing my nose was that I don't wear jewelry, I don't wear makeup, nothing. So I was like, okay, at least there'll be some sort of a permanent bejeweled fixture on me that would, make me always seem as if I'm put together or something. But, ultimately, I didn't even keep that on. So no nose pin, no earrings, nothing. And I'm basically an earrings person anyway, but still, Well, point being, again, in my recent struggle to look for, nose pins and all, there was a shopkeeper who works with pure silver, and he actually customized and made for me two nose pins, sorry, zero size, and he fashioned the corkscrew because unfortunately over here, as you know, it's mostly handmade. So unfortunately, you cannot make the nose bone by hand. I think you really need to have a machine in order to get that done, especially because you need a very smooth end. Because I have actually seen Pakistani made, I think they're Pakistani made, or they're made in the subcontinent, because in any case they're not the type that is made in Europe or in China or anywhere else where they use machines. Because I do have some nose pins actually that are very tiny, very delicate, and they're nose bones. But guess what? The rounded end is not smooth all round. It's as if it's been folded at one end and then pressed together and made into this bulbous end. And it's all fine except that one part of it seems to sort of slightly stick out. So it can actually give you that really tearing or searing feeling when if you suddenly get even the slightest bit abrupt in the movements, as if it's going to tear through your skin or something. It's very painful. Not to say that the machine made bones are not painful. They too, but the pain is different. You can actually feel that there's a pointy edge on one side. So yeah, I think that's why they kind of avoid. They really do avoid making it. So whenever you ask them, oh, can you make it into a nose bone? They're like, no, but we can to make it into a corkscrew for you. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'll probably get my nail clippers handy and cut the tail off if it's too big. But as I said, the he made two nose pins, the jeweler, and he made them really nice, and he customized them and made them very small. One of them's tail was a bit slightly big, but I just cut it off with the nail clippers. So now in my quest for plain nose rings, I was again checking out. People are calling 8 millimeter nose rings small. Like, are you serious? Again, how big do you think our noses are? But then you know what? When I see the comments of some of the buyers who have bought those nose rings and they're like, oh, it's all lovely and fine, but they're too small. And I'm like, excuse me, hello? 8 millimeters is small? I need a 5 millimeter. You see what I'm saying? Usually, the standard smallest that people think, or that is most commonly found at least, are 6 millimeters. And even that is a tad, just a tad. I mean, if you want the kind of the really dainty cuff sort of a look where it seems to be just hugging your nose in just the right kind of and give you just that delicate sort of a sparkle, then yes, I would need a 5 millimeter. Thank you very much. Even a 6 millimeter would be what you normally see when you have these nose girls wearing nose rings and they have the complete O. So yeah, that would be a 6 millimeter for me. But if I want that really lovely, nose hugging ring, then yeah, that would be a 5 millimeter. So there you are. So because my gold nose ring is not plain, it's not 100% plain, and the other one that is plain is, you guessed it, 7 millimeters. And that is why I'm now on a quest looking for the smallest hoop possible, which is 5 millimeter. And in that quest, again, as I said, I keep on coming across all these nose pins as well, because you kind of do digress. You're like, oh, here's a dainty nose pin, and it's a nose bone. Wow. How long is the post? 8 millimeters. Like, seriously? 7 millimeters. 7 millimeters seems to be the set standard. I don't know why. Again, as I said, if you look at our traditional nose pins, they are maximum 6 millimeters. They have to be small because they have to not poke your nose on the inside and hurt you. They're supposed to just fit snugly against your cartilage. Why on earth do you want a nose pin whose needle would hit the other side of your nostril, that it will actually hit your nose bone on the other side? Why? I mean, Why are they making such long posts? Apparently, 8 millimeter is a standard abroad, and abroad, seriously, I mean, how big? As far as I know, Europeans don't have such big noses. As far as I know, generally, even if you do have a big nose, that doesn't mean you have to have a long post. Look at our ears. It doesn't matter how big or small our ears are. Who is comfortable with a long post? Do you want your earrings jabbing against your the nape of your neck? No, you don't want the post to be just sticking into your vein and, poking at you at the base of your, right at the sideline of your skull, you know, or where your neck begins, which is essentially your nape. So why? Why would you want it to hit your neck or your head? That is why it doesn't matter how big or small your ears are. Earrings typically have very small posts for a reason. There are certain weirdos who make a long post for earrings too. God knows why, you know, and they're not comfortable. Nobody wears them. The standard post for an earring is very small, and you can imagine that even that would be considered big for a nose pin. You know, it makes you wonder what the heck is wrong with people where they have, and okay, fine, I know that they tend to give you a variety. Then usually when you buy a nose pin, you can choose from a variety. You can choose the corkscrew, you can choose the L. The L is the most useless of them all, seriously. It's supposed to be the most comfortable because it literally sits against your skin, in a snug fit, but it's so useless because that is the first nose pin that will fall off within minutes. It has no grip whatsoever. And then the corkscrew is the one with the most comfortable grip, except for the fact, again, that the tail is so big. Again, seriously, why? Why? But anyway, we can cut that off and make it to fit. That's okay. But you see, the main problem is not even the tail or the L shaped. The main problem again is the post. The straight line from the stud to the L or to the corkscrew. That straight line in between, that's the post. And that is at least 7 millimeters, which is again too large. It's too large. You want the post to be small so that it should have a kind of a snug fit, a comfortable fit, so that even the lock, which is the L shaped or the corkscrew or the, whatever it is, it should fit snugly against your skin on the inside, instead of jabbing and poking all over your nostrils. Seriously, I mean, I really wonder. I mean, is it really me? Because as I said, I'm beginning to think that maybe there is a reason why people maybe do really have such big noses. I do not know. I still believe no matter how big your nose is, a smaller post is more than welcome, you know. And you see, as I said, you can't cut them. Okay, with the corkscrew you can do something, but with the L-shaped, if it's thin enough, and if they've given you that kind of a bendable sort of thing, then maybe you can even fix that. But with nose bones, you can't cut them short. You can't fix them. You see, that's you have to just live with it. So it's money wasted, you know. And if you buy the whole set, which, as I said, sometimes you can actually get the whole set where you have all the different endings, so you can choose whichever end you want, and they give you all the endings, so you have one of each kind. And then there's one that has the longest, about 12 millimeter wire, which means that is the one for you to customize. So you can customize it and fold it and wrap it and do whatever you want to bend it. It's supposed to be flexible enough for you to work on it however you like, right? But that's another thing. Usually jewelers will tell you, oh, you can just use your hand, and you cannot. It's not easy to use your hand and bend the wires anyhow. I don't know how people do it. I know I can't. I need to get a tweezer, and I need to, literally use that force to bend it the right way. With my hands, I cannot. Sometimes with the hand, it's a fluke and it bends, and you're like, oh wow. And then when you try again, it doesn't move, and you're like, what the hell happened before? How did I move it before, and why isn't it moving now? So yeah, no. It's very easy for jewelers, because jewelers, well, they have the expertise, they have the practice, they can easily bend with their hands, maybe, I don't know. But generally, as I said, it's only the one that comes with the thinnest, which is usually a 20 gauge. You know, 20 gauge is what actually in Pakistan and India jewelers work with most commonly, especially when working with gold and silver. So that's your standard. But again, here abroad, as in when you're buying generically, when you're buying from shops abroad, because I guess they cater to a vast audience, I don't know, you will most commonly find 16 gauge, which is 1.2 millimeter. And many of us, we're not comfortable. I mean, we still can manage, because 1.2 millimeters is still manageable. But even so, you will find many people in the subcontinent also who will feel that no, it's too thick. Because our jewelers tend to work with the finest or the smallest gauge, the smallest perfect gauge, you can say. Amongst the small gauges, the perfect gauge is 20. Okay, 18 is workable, 18 and 20, but they mostly work with 20. So when you see gold and silver and it's so fine, and it's, that's a 0.8 millimeter, that's a 20 gauge. 1 millimeter is an 18 gauge. So they work with these, and they work, as you know, it's mostly handcrafted. Jewels in the subcontinent are handcrafted, not machine made. And one would think that abroad, because it's all machine made, they would make even they would prefer 20 gauge. But for some reason, they seem to feel that the most popular one is the 16 gauge. They even have a 14 gauge, and they think that the most popular is 16 gauge for some odd reason. Or maybe they think that for us it's more popular. I don't know why, because as I said, we tend to use 18 to 20 gauge. So that is another problem that you have to come across, because you if you're going to a jeweler in Pakistan, that's not a problem. But if you're finding the product that you're looking for, and you know that you cannot find it in Pakistan, because it's typically not made by hand, for example, or strangely enough, for some reason, it's more expensive in Pakistan. And so you find that buying it from abroad online is actually cheaper, and you can get, what you want, as in you can get high grade stainless steel, you can get titanium, which is, fade resistant, and it can last forever. Because titanium, even if it's in gold, silver, multicolor, whatever, it's usually they color it within, in the sense that I think it's called an iodinized. Yeah, I think they iodinize it. I think I'm saying it correctly. Anyway, point being, so the color lasts basically forever. So titanium gold, for example, is going to be golden for basically ever, mostly the longest period ever, as compared to even stainless steel. Because stainless steel or surgical steel, it depends. Surgical steel, which is 316L grade stainless steel, which is surgical steel, that also has quite a long time before any color that has been electroplated or PV'd on it, it's going to last long. But generally on stainless steel, even it will fade. At one point it will fade, but in titanium it will not fade. So you get these choices, is what I'm saying, and you get these really good metals that can be just as good as a substitute for gold or silver, especially for those who do not want silver. I mean, if you want silver, then there's no end of it that you can just get from Pakistan for cheap. But when you don't want silver and you don't want gold, because considering the price of gold as well, you think it's not really worth it anymore to get just a plain nose pin or nose ring, for example. So obviously, then you will tend to go for stainless steel or titanium, preferably titanium. And then you find that you've got limited choices for some awkward reason in Pakistan online, even if you're buying from abroad, as opposed to if you are actually abroad, you would find all those choices that you're basically looking for. You will find a 20 gauge very easily, just as easily as you will find it within Pakistan. But when you're trying to find it online in Pakistan, it's so difficult to get a 20 gauge titanium nose ring, for example, or a 20 gauge nose pin. And if you end up with a 1.2, the reason I'm talking all about this is this: if you end up with a 16 gauge, for example, you cannot bend it with your hands. No. So when they give you all these all these nose pins, and they give you the one with the 12 millimeter wire that you can bend at your will. You cannot bend at your will because it's 1.2 millimeters and it's titanium steel, or it's stainless steel, and you need a tool to bend it properly. At least I cannot bend it with my bare hands, sorry. Or I would have fixed a few of them to my preference already, I've got titanium steel nose pins. And I couldn't, for the life of me, figure any of them out. I was like, seriously? And they had it looks as if they've got 8 millimeter posts. I cannot believe that that's even a 7 because, I don't even know, because that's the problem, is that now you don't even know what millimeter you need, because as I said, in Pakistan, generally the old traditional nose pins, they had a very small post. I think I'll be right if I say it's hardly 4 millimeters. Because the jeweler who made my silver nose pins, I didn't even have to tell him the size or anything. I just told him, please make them small, and make them to fit. And he made them to perfection, He made them to absolute perfection. Tail and all. Yes, tail and all. Very small fit, right? Snug fit inside the nose, very comfortable. You literally forget you're wearing them. They're so comfortable. It's just unfortunate that one of them, he had twisted the head the other way wrong. Yeah, because that's another thing, you see. If the head is twisted the wrong way of a corkscrew, then what happens is that the corkscrew's tail end, it goes on the inside of your nose. It doesn't come on the outside. And you know what that means? That means it will hurt because it will poke against the inside of your nose, against your nostril, against your cartilage very badly. And so it was trying to fix its head, which I did very nicely at one point. I don't know what happened that I had to fix it again. And I exerted a little pressure and the stone came out. And it was a real zircon stone, so I kept it. So that's the thing. That is why, again, I said, he also told me, oh, you can easily bend it with your hand. I couldn't bend it easily with my hand, except for once or twice. And it literally was amazing how it suddenly happened, because after that, it wouldn't budge. And I had to press it against a tool to kind of bend it. And in that process, somehow, the stone flew out, which is weird because the stone was literally pronged on every corner possible. Literally, it had about 8 prongs, and yet 2 prongs suddenly opened up in that pressure. So yeah, that's why, that was a 1 millimeter wire, and I couldn't force it easily. I couldn't bend it easily with my hands. So what makes you think that I can bend a 1.2 millimeter wire easily with my bare hands. That's kind of stupid, you know? So yeah, I think that, people, when sellers, especially international sellers, when they're putting out these products online, they should give proper options, considering the fact that, as I said, no, it doesn't matter how big of a nose anybody has. Nobody has such a gigantic ass nose that you would want an 8 millimeter post, you know. Seriously, a 6 millimeter post would suffice as well. But at least keep options. Keep options. Keep 5 millimeters. Keep 6 millimeters. Keep all the options, because the right fit is that the post should be closer to your nose flesh, as in it should be closer to the cartilage. It shouldn't be roaming around inside your nose. It should be small, it should be a snug fit. That is the whole idea of an ideal nose pin, right? So I really don't get it. I don't get it. I don't get the concept of having such long posts. Maybe some people might find it comfortable, but as I said, that's not even the point of a nose pin. The whole point is it shouldn't disturb you. It should have a snug fit, you know? Yes, there should be a leeway. The only reason that a post is slightly longer than the actual size of your cartilage is so that in case of any swelling, you have to have that leeway, that if you're, because all our noses swell, everybody's nose swells, and people might not realize it, but it's pretty frequent. Like when you're asleep and when you wake up, your nose is swollen. Any irritation, any allergy, your nose is swollen. You get the flu, your nose swells up. It's very frequent. It's very normal for your nose to swell up every now and then. So keeping that in mind, that's why the post is always kept at least a millimeter or two larger, right? But still, 8 millimeter long post. Got to be kidding me. The thing hurts really bad. It literally, if you accidentally press your nose, imagine that stabbing pain. It's literally a stabbing pain of metal just poking at the other end of your nose. And you're like, oh my God, who wants that, And yet, if you look at our traditional nose pins that our aunts and grandmothers have been wearing, you will see them pressing their nose and just touching their nose with ease and not even feeling anything, because nothing is hurting them inside, nothing is stabbing them inside. So yeah, I really don't get that concept. Sorry, but seriously, these are noses, not train tunnels. Yeah, work on that. And I'm talking about, again, I'm not talking about Pakistani or Indian or Bangladeshi jewelers. They know their stuff. I'm talking about the international jewelers who claim that they're catering to the whole world, but they literally have just a 16 gauge, that they're working on, and they have a standard of 7 to 8 millimeters in post lengths. What's wrong with you? Seriously. Well, I have a lot more to say about other stuff, but they seem to have no connection with this whatsoever. So I'll just wrap this up. And this is me signing out. Khuda Hafiz.